Welcome to Alchemia's energetic forecast for April 2024. My name is Melanie, and I am sitting here with Alana today. We're going to be diving into some of the astrological dynamics that are coming at us. We're going to do some tarot and also take a look at the gene keys. If it is your first time watching, welcome to the show, to the chaos, to the goodness that we hopefully uncover and provide you. I would love to offer and ask if you could subscribe to the channel. It gives us a big hand up in the internet algorithm. Hit that like button. Let us know below if you have any particular placements you're looking forward to or are scared of. It's always interesting to hear other people's experiences of what's going on. And we're going to jump right into it. If you've never watched one of our forecasts, we do amalgamate a few different modalities. And we're going to start by doing a bit of a recap of March so that we can look at the energy that we're working with coming into April. Then we're going to go through some of April's astrological dynamics. We'll get into the major themes that we see coming up in the collective and for individuals, some of the energetics and the meanings of what those planetary placements are going to look like. We then will look into our tarot forecast that we did for the year ahead, pull a conscious and subconscious card, and we'll round out the forecast, taking a look at some of the gene keys that we'll be navigating.
So for those of us who don't know, we are filming today on March 25th for the April forecast, and we are in the middle of a lunar eclipse in Libra. So it's kind of a little crazy energy, things shifting. Now this eclipse season, correct me if I'm wrong, Melanie. Melanie is the astrological guru within our relationship in Alchemia, but this ties up the eclipse that kind of started in this area back in October, correct?
Yeah. Yes, the eclipses, everyone refers to eclipses as the doorways, right? Like an opening up a new door and closing another door. And this actually really confused me for a long time when I started studying astrology and looking into it. This lunar eclipse is not opening and or closing a door that's happening for the solar eclipse in April. This is a continuation from the series from October, and you're going to be seeing the next development in those events that started back in October. So yes, the eclipses are connected. It's just not the lunar and the solar eclipse that happen within the same time period. Those aren't the two that you're working with. You're working with this as a bookend to what started last October in the previous eclipse season. So they last for 6-month intervals. That threw me for a loop to get my head around when I was discovering eclipse dynamics. So I'm happy we get to explain that, hopefully in an easily digestible manner for people.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was like, I'm thinking back to what happened in October. I mean, like, I guess on the world stage, we had like the Gaza conflict was like really rearing up. So it'd be interesting to see if we see any new developments that arise from that. Hopefully some resolutions, obviously, but yeah, and then even in my personal life too. So yeah, it's in my sign. I'm a Libra.
I know. So interesting when things are this hectic. I'm going to use the word chaotic so much in this forecast. When things are this hectic, it's so hard to guard my tongue and make sure I'm not contributing to like fear mongering. Because if you do have a Libra placement, you're in for it, my love. Like, and this, it can be good, it could be bad, it could be better, it could be worse, it could be anything in between all of those dynamics. All I'm saying is there is going to be some things happening. There's going to be a lot of things happening. And that goes for anyone who is a cardinal. So Libra is a cardinal sign. Those would be Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, and Aries. So all of you are going to have a little tickle of magical space juju affecting you. I mean, we all will because it's eclipse season in and of itself, but you guys get an extra little dash of chaos goodness.
I know, it's like I've been asking for shifts, here it is. But yeah, you're right. There can always be a little bit of this like apprehension. It's like, oh God, how's this going to happen? What kind of cosmic 2x4s are going to be slapping me across the head through this, and just flowing with it, right? So
when we make our thumbnail, we should put cosmic 2x4 on it because that's April in a nutshell. I don't care what placements you have, you're going to get one, at least one. I guess to finish talking a little bit about March before we move into April, we have to discuss the fact that we're moving from that Piscean pool party. We had a big planetary pileup in Pisces throughout March. And when planets sync up like this, when we have them so close and multiple signs in a pileup in signs, we have a lot of aspects and a lot of dynamics. So people have been dealing with like heightened energy since at least the beginning of March. This is already potent time, right? Because we've had so many aspects occurring between the planets in Pisces. From Pisces, we move into the equinox, and then on the other side of that equinox, we're in Aries season. So finishing and rounding out March, that in and of itself is a massive transition of energies. We're going from the cosmic void, 12th house, Piscean archetypes. We're talking just the dreamiest of daydream potentiality, imaginative, good or bad, right? Both sides to every archetype. But a Piscean archetype moving into the Aries, very different, very different vibes. And you have that equinox, which is that rebirth, that Ostara, the natural new year of our organic world, is what I was going to say. Outside of our planets, outside of our buildings and our structures and our society, you have the natural new year that occurs in Ostara in the springtime. The trees start to grow, the snow starts to melt, nature is calling life force forward, the planet is warming up in the northern hemisphere at least, and that's that new beginning energy. So we have out of the dormancy of that water sign into the intensity of a fire sign through the portal of an equinox, and then smack down right into an eclipse starting on the 25th of March, which is today in Libra. So we're not even in April yet, and it's already chaotic, darlings.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's been an intense year, that's for sure so far. I like that pile up in March felt like all the family coming together and like really like powwowing, and now we're going into some big changes and we're getting like, kind of went deep into that ending, like you said, in that Piscean, and now coming into this fiery Aries, we're moving forward and creating new and yeah, like it's like that death and rebirth is like you never really know what that's going to look like. It's kind of unknown. It's kind of scary. It's kind of exciting, and yeah, all of the things.
Yeah. Oh my God. And how you said it's really interesting too, the continuation from the series from October being the fact that Gaza is such a rightly so focus and hot topic these days. Libra is the sign of justice. It is an air sign, right? We are as a lunar eclipse in Libra. Look at what the moon represents, right? So we've got that intuitive connection. It's naturally associated with the feminine, high priestess vibes going inward, that lighting up, a full moon lights up that darkness, right? Bringing light into the shadow. And we're in Libra, and we're taking away the luminary that would normally be lit up. It's eclipsed. It's not shining in the dark, right? And I love working with like a literal example. The moon is no longer bright and the sky is dark. There's no light in the night. So this is occurring in Libra, and I think we're going to see the underbelly a little bit, right? Which can be daunting. We can acknowledge that it's a little daunting, everybody. It's okay. Looking at humanity, looking at ourselves, especially if we're talking on a collective scale, the justice, injustice, the communication, the interpersonal connection, the ideals, the war of ideals, all of that, there's a lot of shadow work, literal shadow work occurring in an eclipse in Libra these days. It's a big basket in and of itself. If that was the only thing happening, it would be a lot.
Yeah, no, because we're coming into April, and I think we've got probably one of the biggest astrological, maybe the biggest astrological event of the year coming up April 8th, right? So we've got another the solar eclipse coming in now.
Yes. So leaving March now. So out of March 25th is when this lunar eclipse in Libra. This is fitting because I'm about to talk about the fact that Mercury is going retrograde and I can't get a sentence out without slurring. So, yes. So from the lunar eclipse in Libra, Mercury is also going retrograde from March into April. So while eclipse season, the portal is open, we're doing the eclipse thing. We are doubling down, and now Mercury is retrograde going into April. And then as we enter lovely April, there is a total solar eclipse occurring in Aries on the 8th. So that's two big things syncing up, but that's not all that's happening. We also have Mars and Saturn going conjunct in Pisces. These are both of the malefic planets. So Mars and Saturn are both malefic. And that just generally means that they're associated with harder, more shadowy, more denser energetics. In a very broad blanket statement, you could say negative, but that's not, we know that that's not how that works. But they definitely have some more difficult dynamics, and they're going conjunct. So they're coming and meeting up together in Pisces, which we just had Pisces season. So we want to recap. We have eclipses. So sorry, let's start at the beginning. Equinox. Then we have eclipses, Mercury retrograde, Mars and Saturn going conjunct. And let's just toss the fact in that there's also a bloody comet showing up out of nowhere. So
Cosmic 2x4.
Yeah, have fun with that. But just kidding. Okay, we'll break that down a little bit. The total solar eclipse is crossing over America. So as we all know, America is definitely a pillar in influential societal justice, social justice dynamics. It's very big on the world stage. You want to thank Hollywood for that, or media for that, whatever you want to talk about. America has a lot going on, and there's not a lot of times in recent history where it doesn't have a lot going on, but it's really getting brought to the center stage because there's a total solar eclipse occurring that goes right through the path of the Americas.
Going dark in America, middle of the day. And then I think we're actually supposed to be able to see, I think, is it Jupiter and Saturn or Mars and Saturn, like in the sky when it goes dark too? It's supposed to be pretty, you can see some of the planets actually, I heard.
Yeah, Uranus. So yeah, I think it should be Mars and I don't want to give the wrong info. I can't remember what ones it is, but they do light up.
Well, yeah, you'll see a couple of them like right there at the time of the eclipse. Yeah, a couple planets and stars.
They don't
maybe
light up, they're always there. But everything else goes dark, and then you're like, oh, I see this. Which is, once we get into the themes, we're going to talk about that a little bit more because that is a big one. So what does it mean? What does it all mean? Mars going conjunct with Saturn in Pisces. Mars in and of itself is that warrior archetype and is a big player this eclipse season, because this solar eclipse is ruled by Mars, and it's Aries because it's Aries season. Aries is also ruled by Mars, and the archetype of that warrior, of that fire, of that intensity, of that we're gonna do things now, like let's get some movement happening, is big and definitely at play. So this is a big deal, this conjunction, because this is a conjunction that is kind of a continuation that started back in 2020 was the last time we had the Mars and Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. So this bookends that cycle. It is a shift from an air sign conjunction in 2020 to a water sign conjunction. Sorry, they're conjunct in a water sign in 2024. And I think the best analogy I can think of is, okay, so we all know what happened in 2020. We have COVID, big airborne attack. Aquarius is an air sign. It's a little on the nose, Mars and Saturn, if you ask me, but that's fine. And we're moving into a conjunction between Mars and Saturn in a water sign. So let's talk about a big destructive wave, tsunami level of transformation and chaos that might be brought to the table on a global scale when we're looking at Mars going conjunct with Saturn in Pisces. So that's something that, again, in and of itself would be a large energy to contend with and hold space for and to navigate. But we also have an eclipse, and we also have a comet, and Mercury is also retrograde. And then also somewhere around April 19th, Uranus and Jupiter go conjunct as well, which pivots it all a little bit and gives us a little dose of positive energy. It helps to, I guess, mark a point in April where we're moving out of some of that chaos and that potentially destructive energy, or at least very tumultuous energy. We start to move out of that around 19th, 20th of April. And that is also the time that good old Taurus season starts to roll around. And because we had such a big pileup start in Pisces a few months ago, we're going to also have another big planetary pileup in Taurus. And there's going to be, I believe, the Sun, obviously it's Taurus season, but Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter as well will be at home in Taurus there. So it's going to be a pretty big pileup, and that's what I'm feeling like it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be a little bit out of the woods feeling. You're like, oh, okay, wow, I can see the sunshine again.
It's like
So
coming
that's
back to
April.
grounding. Like let's get like we're grounded now. We got some traction. We're moving forward. We've like been through the worst of it, kind of vibration, and yeah.
Honestly, it makes me think of the feeling you used to like say that you had a freak out because you were really hangry, but then you ate something. So
Ah, yes.
Aries is that freak out because you're like really pissed off because you're hangry and you're explosive, and then you eat something and then you're like, oh, I'm okay. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'm Taurus season now. It's all good. Forget about it.
I love that. That's good. There's something to look forward to, like a little pause in the break of crazy chaos, like you said. It's but like you said, like we're kind of used to it now. Like, like we've been warriors, I feel like the astrology has just been kind of going crazy for years, like you said. But 2024 has not really been a respite as of yet, but like it's like becoming normal, like this is like, this is just normal to contend with these kind of crazy energies, these big shifts happening.
Mhm. That's very true. So, just before we move too far into the energetics and the meaning of things, which is actually perfect because that's exactly the first point, the first theme that we identified was that there is zero downtime with this astrology and for April. We can just acknowledge that I have never seen this many astrological dynamics occurring.
Mm-hmm.
So, take a breath and realize that we are living through truly unique times. These are massive massive concepts to deconstruct, massive reflection happening. And I know we're going to say, I should count how many times we say chaos, but when we say that, I use that word instead of just transformation because transformation kind of has like this positive undertone, right? And it can be. Don't get me wrong, this can be very positive, but we have all experienced the fatigue and the tiredness that comes with continuously being called to transform. That is not easy. And when we hear people say, oh, this is a very transformative time to be on the planet, it's like, oh, that sounds nice. And I want to say that this is a very chaotic time on the planet. It's a very chaotic time to choose to be here because in that birth canal, when you're becoming new, but you don't know who you are yet, and you don't know how to work with your new legs and handle the world with any amount of dexterity, that's not necessarily fun and or comfortable. And I just want to acknowledge before we go into the themes that if you are tired and if you are experiencing the heaviness of being here right now, that I'm just here to validate that. It's heavy. It's a big,
Yeah.
heavy time. There's a lot happening. And it's not just you, the world, everyone. It's intense, and you are rightly so experiencing the intensity.
Yes, we can have some permission and some grace to feel the depth of those feelings. And I think that's also, we say transformative as in a positive way, but like you have to feel the depths of the dark chaos or whatever, the dark energy, the dark feminine, all of that needs to come up and you need to be able to dive in deep to that in order to let it fully die. Otherwise, you're just keeping it alive within you or within the collective at some level. So yeah, that's a good permission slip.
Mm-hmm. And it does bring us into the first theme for April that we're talking about, and that would be that there is zero downtime. This is like, I think the number one thing I've been hearing from everyone I work in my day job is customer service. So I talk to a lot of people. Everyone is exhausted. Everyone is so tired. And they're like, well, Melanie, I'm supposed to be feeling fresh and new. It's springtime, right? Where's this reinvigorated spark for life? And I was like, thinking about it and sitting with it because I've been experiencing that too. I'm upset almost that I'm not more vibrant, more springy, ready to go. Where's the motivation in my body? Why do I feel like I need a nap? We really need to acknowledge the fact that there has been no downtime energetically. And while most of us think we exist in this 3D realm and what we're handling and dealing with is just right here, you have a whole cosmic self that is navigating, shifting, moving timelines, healing, letting go, calling in, manifesting. Our beings are existing on multiple planes at a time. And that takes energy and capacity that we might not see that we are expending in that way, but is affecting ourselves and other people around us daily. So there is zero downtime in April, especially coming out of the month of March, which wasn't easy to begin with.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. Yeah, and I think it's also important to note too is like springtime, yeah, there's like a freshness that we normally feel to it, but it's also like a time of detox. And then you look at the earth as like the runoff, right? Like the mud, the gunk, it's all moving. It's like it's good that
Mm.
it's moving and you start to feel like in flow with that motion, but like that's happening in our bodies, that's happening in our lives. It's that like death and rebirth again, really, right? And so like yeah, that can be like you think of when you've ever done like a physical detox. I don't know if anybody does that, but other than me. But yeah, it's like, you feel kind of crappy. You feel kind of bogged down initially until things start moving properly and you get into the flow of the life force energy that's coming through you and coming back. So,
Mm.
yeah, I thought that might be interesting to mention too.
That's a perfect analogy. I love the fact that we can go back to nature again and again and see these teachings again and again because she is the most profound and the original teacher. It is the mud, the water that is the fertilizer that grows the flower later, right? And
Mhm.
before we get to just skip to the beautiful, bounteous summertime, we do have the deconstruction of winter, which is the snow, the melting, the thawing, the cracking of the earth's crust, right? That all speaks to a little bit of struggle, a little bit of unease, a little bit of gunk, literal mud, emotional mud, cosmic mud, societal mud. We are in that gooey, formidable, soft, dirty phase where it's like, man, wading through mud is hard. You ever tried walking in knee-high, wet, muddy forests? It's not pleasant. And I think that, again, it's a really big permission slip to give yourself grace and to remember that when we are working with all this type of Piscean energy, it's often occurring in our subconscious minds, or as I sometimes refer to it as like the behind the scenes. It's just not really obvious the work that we're doing, right? Like maybe it's your subconscious, maybe it's your astral body, maybe it's like you're processing and handling things that you aren't even aware that you're handling. But not just you. The lady in front of you in the line at the grocery store is also experiencing springtime. She's also going through all of this. It is really like we don't necessarily know why we are tired or why random people on the street are snappy or why your cousin just lost her shit because you didn't put your cup in the right spot. It's this awareness, looking at the astrology, being in tune with the seasons that allows us to give ourselves compassion and grace and give other people compassion and grace.
Absolutely. I think it's like that's what I love about astrology is like it's literally a zoom out. It's that big picture. And so like when you get the big picture, you can be like, oh, okay, you don't like freak out as much because you understand that, oh, this is a natural process. This is a part of the cycles. This is what we need to go through. And yeah, you can't heal your body without cleaning out the gunk first. You can't grow the trees without moving the earth around and, being fertilized and the water coming back, right? So it's trusting in that natural timing, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that ties perfectly. These tend to flow into each other. So that's the first theme of the fact that there's been zero downtime. If you've been looking for respite or renewal, there hasn't been a lot of rest. March wasn't necessarily restful. February wasn't necessarily restful. 2024 in and of itself has been big energy. Whatever that looks like for you with your personal chart, your personal life, your own aspects, it's not been restful and there's no downtime. So yes, if you're tired, if this eclipse season feels daunting, if you're maybe not excited for spring and you're just wondering what the heck you're going to have to handle next, I get it. It brings us to the second theme, which is the fact that this eclipse season is really messy. This one is a messy one. There's a lot of intensity and change in this eclipse season. And with that comes, unfortunately, whether it's internal or external, it comes with the potential for collateral damage, especially when we're working within that Aries archetype,
Mhm.
especially when we're tired. You can think about it in a very literal sense, but I know that I am way more likely to have a breakdown or lash out if I'm just tired.
Yeah, you're not centered, you don't have your wits about you, you don't have the same space and energy to put towards keeping your vibration higher or like being in a positive mindset because it's just like you're literally like your tank's low, right? I totally get that for sure.
Yeah, and then we're going to pile on a bunch of new stuff. A Mercury retrograde, which I'm going to blame my inability to speak on for this entire video. And and then you're adding a comet. First of all, this comet comes out of nowhere and we haven't seen this comet, especially the fact that this is all happening at the same time, y'all, I need to emphasize how rare this is. Like, this is not normal. Mars and Saturn conjunct, Mercury retrograde, a comet, eclipses, all happening at the same time following the equinox. If I went through and broke down every single archetype that is having a relationship and an aspect and a dynamic right now, we'd be here for a very long time. There's going to be a little bit of mess. And the reason, you can do a few things with this. Why focus on the fact that this is going to be messy? It gives you a clear reason to allow some grace into your life. This is not the time to be expecting things to work out well or to have high expectations of other people. This is going to be like a go with the flow and make it out of the mud the best way you can kind of energy. It gives you that compassion. And it also gives you a sense of warning and a call to pay attention and to be aware of your communication, your actions, how you speak to people, what's going on, and the energy that you bring into the world around you, because everybody's going through this also.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is so true.
Mm-hmm. So this eclipse season is messy. And that's going to have to just be okay, because it's going to be the way that it is. And you can maybe flow with that with grace. This is not intended to be foreboding by any means, but it's an acknowledgement of there is a lot going on, and you're going to have to be aware of how you show up to handle it.
Yeah,
You got to take
totally. And it
responsibility.
kind of brings me into that like when things are kind of like disorderly and messy and all the things, you know, like we'll talk a little deeper about the gene keys later, but like the very first gene key we're kind of dealing with is that shadow of control. And that's a very reactive place to be, really, right? It's like when things are out of order, it's like you go into the shadow of control and try and fix everything and try and make everything okay. But calling in that trust and that permission and that grace can allow you to step out of that shadow and get some acceptance, right?
And that can be the hot-headed fear response of Aries in Aries season. Mm-hmm. And the fact that Mars is going to be conjunct with Saturn when things aren't working out the way a low vibrational Aries wants them to, that's a call to conflict. It's a call to emotional outbursts. And I'm not saying everybody who has an Aries placement is like this, right, guys? It's just that there is that lower vibration of the underdeveloped, or the low frequency expression of an archetype like Aries brings in that fire, emotional outburst, intensity, my way or the highway. I need it to work out this way. This is the way I want it to be. It's that control. We're going this way. And if you don't want to come along with me, we're going to go this way by force. And then you have that coming into relationship with Saturn. And this is happening in Pisces. It's like trying to strong arm your emotions to be what you want them to be. We all know that's not how that works, guys. You got Mars and you've got Saturn. It's structure. It's discipline. It is often referred to as restriction. No, not now. It's that wise father archetype saying, yeah, maybe you can have that, but you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to earn it. It's not this instant gratification effect that we often crave. So that aspect of control, and that I want this, and I'm maybe going to have a temper tantrum if I can't have it now. There's a lot of intensity and juice in there, on top of the fact that this eclipse season is messy and we're all a little tired and everybody just had a whole bunch of Piscean emotions going on, and we were in that cosmic void, and now we're called to interact with the outside world and also keep your temper in check while everything is going chaotic and crazy.
And you're taking responsibility and shifting things in your life. Like, yeah, all of those things.
My gosh. So yes, that is the second theme: acknowledgement and permission for the fact that it's going to be a little bit messy. So give yourself grace and some space, some deep breaths.
Oh my gosh.
So we've talked a little bit about the macro and the micro already, which I think, again, we should maybe get that on a t-shirt. Macro, micro.
Totally.
We say it so much. Cosmic 2x4, macro, micro. It brings us to our third theme, which is that the global stage is under deconstruction, not construction, deconstruction, which then, of course, like we said, from the mud grows the tree, grows the beautiful, gorgeous flower. But we are in some establishment of said mud phase. We have Saturn and Mars that are really behaving like that tsunami and crushing the global dynamics as we know them. And I don't think anybody needs our energetic forecast to tell them that the way our world works on a global, governmental, societal, structural level is massively under deconstruction.
Oh yeah, we've been seeing for like the past, what, 4 years now, we've been seeing all the flaws in the system have just been like one after the other, just highlight, 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 highlight. And I think so many of us have been in such a, like, I'm sick of this kind of energy. And I think the fact that it's been coming to our awareness is like that sign of that's the initial phase of anything is like, yeah, that is shifting, and that deconstruction is the first phase. It's like, if we want to rebuild the foundations of our society, of our collective consciousness, so to speak, our governments are, are the way that everything's structured in our patriarchal world, then like, yeah, we have to break it down first. And that's just the way that works. And that's a scary time to be in. Breakdowns are breakthroughs, really, right? Like it's intense.
And I really feel, for me, within all of that, in order to build something beautiful, we cannot rush through the process of feeling how tender our hearts are and how much tending our humanity needs. When we go through and we deconstruct things, it's usually because we see that there is a problem, and then we can often feel defeated. There's a lot of emotions that come with that. And if we are going to want to move forward and rebuild and reconstruct a dynamic, beautiful, inclusive, kind, safe world to be human in, that means we can't skip over feeling the underbelly dirty mud that we have in some way, shape, or form contributed to, created, cultivated, lived within, whether that's big communities, so we're talking government, we're talking societal, we're talking global wars, the war machine, capitalism, the fact that we are murdering people, that we have that as an option still to just take out entire types of people is on the table still. There's going to be some mud that we need to look at, guys. It's going to make you sad. There's dirt in there. Motivation, who's leading who. You have that warrior archetype and that father Saturn heavy intense archetype, and they are flinging some emotions around, some big concepts around right now. And that can be, our hearts are tender and we're tired and we need tending, because when you are doing all of this, the only way to take that and build something more beautiful, more kind, more earth people first, and not money, capitalism, colonialism, and taking from the earth. If we were going to do an earth first, human first approach, we have to tend to the cause of all of that, which are the wounds and the pain and the heart and the fact that we're aching inside.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important concept, is like, if like you can't spiritually bypass this. You can't skip this step. You can't not feel it all. Like it's like, otherwise you're just going to perpetuate the same if you don't tend to those wounds and you don't bring,
like, yeah,
you
can.
want it, yeah, you can, but if you want a compassionate world and you actually want that new strong foundation of that new earth of one of love and compassion and in flow with nature and flow with the earth, then yeah, we have to feel the depths of the darkness of what we've created as a collective and take responsibility for it. And that's that Saturn energy is coming in as well too, right? And it's almost like coming out of victim consciousness, it feels like too. It's like we're raising above that. We're stepping into a space of, or hopefully we're going to raise above it. I'm going to really preface that because I could also see the victim really having a go in this experience.
Hold the image. We're going this way, guys.
Yes. And so like that's again where it's like we kind of say like, yeah, this is a chaotic energy, it's intense, but like it's also transformative and it's also good. And that's where like getting that micro macro, that big picture again is like we're seeing where this is going and trusting that. But like, yeah, we have to feel it all. And like we don't want to feel it. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to feel all of those things of like what's going on in the world and what's going on in my life, even the things I've created that I have to now do a bunch of work to change and shift and being called to, like it's easy to ignore that. But I think that's a really important piece, is like, and from the mind, it's almost easier to ignore it, when we disconnect from the mind, like you said, it's like heart, it's that tender heart. These are emotional pieces that are coming into play, especially with that Piscean energy, right?
Mm-hmm. And I can bring in some very classic sayings that I'm sure people have heard, but the only way out is through.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one here. We don't get to, like you said, there's no other way to do this. What the work we have to do is to feel. That's it. That's what we have to do. Because If we don't, we will have to sleep in the bed that we've made, like we are right now. We have contributed to the way things are.
Oh, it's
And
just
that is
somebody,
a
it's the next
world.
generation's problem always. That's what we've been doing forever.
Yeah.
And the
Well,
buck
and
stops
too,
here.
right? It's easy to look at this and be like, wow, look at what America is doing. Look at Gaza. Look at Israel. Look at them. Look at them. Look at them. Look at them. It's really easy to identify these patterns on the macro, which you should. But what is little Joe Blow going to do about Gaza right now, in this moment, right now, other than the very standardized sign this petition, make sure you're sending funds to the proper people who can actually get supplies, blah, blah, blah. There are those steps. Take those steps. I'm not discounting those steps. But you also have to take the fact that there is both a perpetrator and a victim inside of you. There is war happening inside of you. And that is your responsibility. That is on you. The war that is occurring, it doesn't matter who put it there. It doesn't matter if you want to say it was mom or dad or stepbrother or society or men or women. I don't care. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because the only way out of that is through that. The only way out of that is to feel that. And it is a call to acknowledge that you need to be responsible for your internal war. There are dynamics. There's an internal tyrant inside of you that is going to be called forward when they have a temper tantrum with this Aries fueled up, pumped up, ready to go, fiery archetype. That tyrant is you. That's on you. How you behave when that tyrant shows up, that is on you. What are you going to do about that? And it's the exact same thing when you put yourself in that victim mentality. Look what everybody has done to me. Look what this mean Aries thing is doing to me.
It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. The foundation's the foundation, and it needs to change, and it's changing, man. That's what's happening this month.
And you know what? That's that tender piece. That's that compassion piece. That's the take a damn breath and watch the dance. Watch the war in you. Because there is one. If there's a war in the world, there's still wars in us, guys. It's the macro and the micro. It's the bitch of the macro and the micro. It's not fun.
Right.
And that does tie in and bring forward the fourth theme. So the third theme, the global stage is under deconstruction. We're not building new stuff yet, guys. We are still figuring out the mud that we're working with. What do we have? What goods? What pearls are in the mud that we have to work with to build a new world? Dream about the world, imagine the world, get ready to build the world. I'm not saying that you can't get excited about the more beautiful world that is coming, but we're still in the thick of it. She is coming down. And that brings in the fourth theme, which is more of a internal, personal level. So the third theme, external, big dynamics. Fourth theme that I really see coming in would be the adapt or die theme. And this is a carryover from March, because I think we talked about this in March's forecast as well. And I think this is going to be a theme from probably 2020 on, is the adapt or die. Our planet, life itself, consciousness, the genetics of what makes us human is under a deep evolutionary urge to transform. And that is snowballing and getting bigger and getting faster. And I don't mean to say adapt or die to be scary, like you're going to die tomorrow, but you need to adapt and learn to let die. Because if you don't, you are not moving with the collective evolution, and it will die. It will die. That part of you will need to die, or you might not evolve. And that's a whole other conversation.
Well, yeah, and these could be, the death can be like, from not like an actual death perspective, but like the death of old parts of you, whether they're thought patterns, belief systems, that are no longer serving you, that maybe have been holding you back, so it's like, but when we let go of these things, there's fear like that comes up. It's a primal fear to like, it's like, who am I if I let this go? It's served me for so long. It's been my friend for so long. It's been a part of my framework and the way that I navigate the world for so long. And so that's where it's challenging to like that, like it is like, that adaptation, it feels intense. And so it can be almost like even like that statement itself, adapt or die, is like, it's intense, right? So it's like kind of brings in that feeling.
Totally. And you know what? I originally shied away from wanting to use that terminology because it's just not me. Like as a person, as Melanie, I don't like the severity, like the polarity of it. Like it's like, oh, okay, well, like there's always a third option. Don't make me extreme. I don't want to be an extreme person. But that thought process in a way is a huge ass privilege to be able to say, oh, I'll think about that later. I don't need to address this. I'll just maybe skirt this and not look at what's going on. What I'm saying is like that part of the way humans think, that is being called into question big time. No, the time is now. How you show up in society right now really matters when there is this much transformation going on. Whether you want to talk about this as a cosmic astrological abstract thing, or with the fact that we need to figure out how, as a society, as a world with multiple governments and with the capacity to interact with different people of different beliefs, of different religions, all of that is speeding up. More people, more information, more connection, more potential. You need to show up now. If you aren't happy with the way things are going, when are you going to do something? There's not always a third wait till later option. There's always other options, but there's not always a, oh, I'll do it later option. This is very much so, next point on my list, this is very much so make the cut energy. For yourself, for you. You need to adapt. When are you going to do it? The time is now. It's gonna, the energies are in your favor. When are you going to make the cut?
Why are you still resisting what you know? And I think a lot of us, I think we all have ideas of the parts of ourselves that are constantly being called to our attention all the time. Like those are the ones that are screaming at us like, hey, like little like check engine light, and we're like, I'm just going to keep driving. It might go away. Like, and it's like, no, like the time is now to check that, to work with that. Right.
Yeah. And when we work with these constructs, you have to remember that what is dying away is not you, right? It's not that, oh, I need to kill this part of my personality and I don't want to be this person anymore. No, it's these constructs and these limiting beliefs and these patterns that you have subscribed to and put yourself in, and these molds and these performances and these filters. Those things, if they are not serving you, if the time is now to cut them away, let them go. Yeah. It is adapt, move on, free yourself, let yourself be rebirthed. You have that capacity within you, right? This is you. What do you need? What version of you do you need to let go of in order to thrive? The world needs you. I don't know how many times I'm going to end up saying this in forecasts. We need you. We need your authentic self. You came here for a reason. I cannot do what you do. I do not know what you know. I cannot feel the way that you feel exactly. And I cannot tell your story with the potency and with the intensity and with the integrity that you can. And this dang planet needs you. I need you. And I need you to show up. I need you to do that work. It's true. There is no time not to be you. Everything, nothing is slowing down. The timelines are shifting. Things are getting faster. Things are realigning. This is it. This is the time you chose to be here on the planet. If you're here, we need you to be here. Not the thing that your teacher said to you 20,000 fucking years ago. Sorry, I'm getting too intense. I'm going to start swearing. Not that thing that your teacher said you can't do, or that your brother said you can do, or the way your boyfriend thinks you should be. I don't care about any of that. None of that matters. It's not you. I need you. Do what you got to do to get rid of that. That is all, in my humble opinion, that the spirituality, the spiritual practices, the plant medicine ceremonies, all of it is there to help you handle the stuff that isn't you so that you can show up again. This entire world has shit on you, and now you're not allowed to be here. So do what you got to do in order to be allowed to be here.
Be you. Exactly.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I got sweaty. I'm hot.
Aries is coming through ya. I need you. It is that kind of energy though, really, right? Like even within myself, I feel that like resistance to things changing, and it's like there's kind of this energy. It's like when are you going to flow with it? When are you going to choose to just show up, be here, and do the thing? And like I have aspects of myself that I'm working on always, and everybody does. I know. Yeah, it's a lot, right? And definitely a pinnacle we're coming to at this point in the astrology and in this year. So.
This adapt or die, this shift, this energy, this pivot is why we created Alchemia.
Yeah.
There is a you in there. There is a light, and I believe in it so goddamn much. It is in there, and it is good, and it is beautiful, and it deserves your love. It deserves you. It deserves to be here. It deserves to be seen. Let it out. Give
Oh
me
my
your
gosh.
weird. Like, God damn it. And you know what?
Yes.
I don't want to take away from how hard and terrifying that is. That is hard and it is terrifying. And there is a reason we've hidden those parts of ourselves, because this world is not always kind. I know that. We know that. And I'm not taking away from how hard this is, but we need to get to a point as individuals and within community where we can live from the inside out. Who are you? And what do you need to bring into reality, into the 3D? You are here for a reason. I don't care if you don't know that. I know that you're here for a reason. I don't care who you are when you're watching this. You are here for a reason, or else you wouldn't be here. And you might not have the tools or the skills to bring that forward. Find them. Message us. Comment below. What are you working on? I don't care what you got to do. I'll help you any way I know how. Alana will help you any way that she knows how. What tools do you need to learn to handle what you need to handle? Find it. Find the biggest thing on your list. You have an issue with your mom. You don't know how to have a conversation or a relationship with her. You and your brother don't get along. This person at work always speaks to you this way. What is the thing? What is it? And then I need you to write a list. What are we going to do about it? How do we feel about it? Maybe we just need to sit in those feelings. That is this. That is the adapt or die. Do the work. Do the thing. There's no conference online that's going to do that for you. You need to do that. That's on you. That's it.
Ain't nobody going to tell you how to do it. You got to find your own way through. And like you said, all those tools, you might try 10 before you find the one that works for you. And you got to just keep approaching it. And like failure is not an option. It's like, it's just like, you know,
okay,
like
next.
you keep going. Yep. Keep going. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, maybe that worked a little. Okay. I'll remember that. But next thing. What's the next thing? What can I try? What can I do? What can I feel? Right. I'm going to make it through. Yeah.
I get knocked down, but I get up again. You ain't never going to keep
Never
me
going to keep me down.
Oh, wow. And you know what? That's so hard. I can. Whew, what a journey. We're going to move on, or else I'm going to go down that rabbit hole again.
I love it.
Yes.
I love
those are the main themes, man. And this is big energy. It's big and it's fiery and it's intense. You can see the intensity. We can't have this conversation without that intensity coming up. That fire, that belief, that drive, and that is a gift.
Yeah. Well, that's what you said. That is what fuels Alchemia. That's like at its core is like that transformation. And there's a reason why it's called Alchemia, that transformative process, that alchemical process that's occurring within each and every one of us, just by breathing, just by moving through life. And the power that can happen when we align to that consciously. And it's powerful. I wish that I had these tools when I was younger, but you know, my journey led me here. And took me down some really dark paths. And that's where I found my spiritual journey. And yeah, like you said, that's what our mission is to help people in and on their spiritual journey to find themselves, to find that aligned, authentic version that we are all seeking. And it can be we get so lost and far away from that with the pull of society, the pull of everything. And it's time to come home to that.
Hugely so.
Yeah.
We have to. We're at a point, where our planet, where our world, where evolution itself, where humans, where what we are needs that.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's so funny because you can have such an intense need to do that. And even if you sat back and did nothing, that evolution and that dynamic and that change is happening now.
Yeah.
And the movement is happening now. And I don't mean like a political or societal movement. I literally just mean the energetic movement. It is snowballed. We are changing. We are evolving. Nature's going to grow. We're not part of nature. There's an evolution that is continuously happening.
Yeah.
I feel called to share a few mantras, I guess, that help me, that I say, because Alana and I are just people and we feel and are subject to this chaos as well. But when stuff like this is going on, when there's eclipses, when there's transformation, one of my go-to is everything is working out best case scenario. And I can say that with full faith and full trust because I know that in my bones. That's my world. That's my reality. I know that God or the universe is benevolent. I trust that. I know that in my bones. And when I say everything is working out best case scenario, that gives me so much grace. I will learn the lessons I have to learn because that is the integrity of life. Alana, you say that all the time. That is the integrity of life. We are here to do this. You're here to learn these lessons wherever you are. The second thing that I say often is the most sacred thing is what is. You're learning the lesson you need to learn. Everything is working out best case scenario. The most sacred thing is what is. And yeah, it all comes out in the wash.
It all comes out in the wash. Yes, totally. Love that. No, mantras can be really great. And yeah, because when you get into some of those dark, shadowy aspects of self, of the collective, having those is like a little flashlight in there to like grab onto and be like, okay, I know I feel this way. This is my truth. I'm gonna hold on to this while I'm feeling through this, the mud, the gunk, all the crap that's coming up, but that deep trust it lends to you, really, right? So it's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Let's move on to the gene keys before I go on another little Aries tangent. Alana, darling, lead away. I'll follow you.
Yeah, of course. So for those who aren't familiar with the gene keys, they are a system based off of human design put together by Richard Rudd. And the way that it works is, so it does align with astrology. It aligns with the I Ching as well. Each and every gene key has its time that it goes through each week of the year. And there's a shadow aspect to every single gene key, and then there's a gift aspect. So we can kind of look at how we evolve through these places. So it's like everything, it's like looking at the whole and looking at both sides of the coin and how we can embody both the shadow and the gift. And then the highest expression is the Siddhi. So it's Siddhi. And that's just like it's another flavor of love. And they say all the shadows are a flavor of fear. So that's a little snippet about what the Gene Keys is all about, but take a look at Richard Rudd's work if you want to dive in deeper. But we can kind of like look at the beautiful, colorful, sometimes scary, shadowy words that are coming up for April, and we're in it right now. The first one is the shadow of control, and it goes into the gift of authority and then the Siddhi of valor. And so like we talked about this, about, things, it's springtime, things are moving, things are, we said deconstructing, things are breaking down. And so like when that happens, we want to bring in that aspect of control. We want to try and make ourselves feel safe again. And the reality is, from a higher perspective, control is an illusion. It's like when we're flowing with what is, we shift into that gift status, that gift state, then we get to respond to what is, and we get to work with it, and we get to flow with it more. And I think we see this a lot in, the spiritual collective, especially today. But I think everybody's like craving flow, that word gets thrown around a lot. But it's like that, like, and this is an interesting one because I always try and contemplate the difference between flow and control. And I'm like, well, that's like, there's that in between place. And that I think is that authority. That is like being in your personal power, responding in the moment, being present. So we're kind of working with those energies. And then we kind of move into the shadow of agitation, which will be kind of the like mid to the first week of April there. And the shadow of agitation, Melanie knows very well because this is one that she has in her chart, but it moves into initiative and is the gift of initiative and the shadow of awakening. And I feel like with the intensity of like that do or die kind of energy, that like adapt or die kind of energy, this is kind of like awakening's like pretty absolute. It's pretty intense. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Melanie.
It is always so wild to me. I like doing, Alana and I were just talking about the structure of this, and if we wanted to do the gene keys right after the astrology. And I love it because looking at the gene keys and all of these shadows, the gifts, and the cities, these are the keywords we've been using for the entire video. This entire conversation, we've been using these keywords.
Totally.
And it's just, when you look at that, it's just wild. But yeah, agitation is really interesting because often when you think, oh, I'm agitated, it's very similar to the frequency of irritation or frustrated, right? Like, oh, I'm annoyed. But you can also just agitate something by shaking it. You can agitate the soil and the potted plant in order to have root expansion. Agitation just means to disrupt, right? And we have a really human tendency often, those denser frequencies, to lay over a negative connotation. Agitation, it is a shadow frequency, and it does have big disruption that can occur. But through chaos, through disruption, through a mudslide, for example, there's redistribution of nutrients. We can, when you undo a whole puzzle, you get to put the puzzle back together in a different way. When you break something, there is now new space for potentiality, which is a really clear and easy way to see how it moves into initiative. Okay, so I'm there's something off, something's wrong, something has been agitated, and I am now presented with an option. Do I sit here and be pissed, be agitated, be upset, sit in that emotional frequency of just like, everything's chaotic and I'm grumpy and I'm tired and the world's calling me to change? Or do you take that initiative? Do you show up? Do you take a step? Do you try? Do you try? That's pretty much what it is. Where's that urge to try? Because you learn really quickly when you work with initiative and the city of awakening, there is nothing that you can do in particular to awaken, which is why the spiritual path in and of itself has so many paradoxes. Awakening is something that happens or it doesn't. You are awake or you are asleep. And when you work with this dynamic, it is screaming eclipse energy. It is screaming the portal of take a step through the door, take the initiative. You do not know where you're going to end up. You don't. We don't. I don't. No one really knows. And that is the beauty. And that is what gets spurred into action when agitation is triggered. The control dynamic, authority, and valor. When we started talking about that gene key, first of all, Alana, it just makes me clearly see stepping into Aries season. Valor. When you have a pumped up, fueled up Aries warrior who is fighting for justice, for love, for light, for goodness, that is the epitome of valor. And then you look at the shadow frequencies of that archetype of Aries and that control, that need to direct, that need to have things work out their way. It is such a subtle little shift. And it is that line of authority, like you said, that decision, that autonomy, that what am I choosing to align to? Where am I willing to put what am I willing to put my fire behind? That discernment, that authority, that clear-headedness in a way, which is funny because Aries rules over the head as well. All very relevant and adds such a rich level of contemplation when you take the gene keys and you see the astrology and then you just observe the world around you. It is, like we've said hundreds of times already, it's potent. There's a lot happening right now.
Absolutely. And I think also I think one of the things I really like about the gene keys is they are quite approachable. And that's what I've heard from people who maybe aren't super into astrology, but yeah, like these words, it's just like he talks about, like Richard Rudd talks about the art of contemplation. And so it's playing with the words in your mind. It's having fun with them. It's seeing what they mean to you. It's, and in that process, you start to shift. It's like that's engaging with the work really, right? And so for some people who maybe don't align with, astrology because it's maybe a little too much to have to consider, too much to have to comprehend, too much to have to interpret in a way. The gene keys can be a little bit more approachable that way. And like you said, the words that he uses for this, like from the I Ching, they're very potent and they're right in alignment with it for sure.
Yeah. Astrology is a whole system you have to learn in order to be able to work with it and use it. And it's a big system, man. It's complicated. Gene keys are, in that regard, so much more approachable. They're usable right away. And I like it because they give you a clear structure a lot of the time to something that we would often consider more feminine, more flowy, more untangible. This is the shadow frequency. This is what this frequency looks like at a higher vibration, at the gift frequency, and then the acidic frequency. It's pretty black and white. There's a lot of steps, a lot of clear structure that I often think contemplation can sorely lack for me. So that's why it's such a beautiful tool. What's our next one?
Our next one is
Where are we going?
The Shadow of Expectation, the Gift of Detachment, and the City of Celebration. It's funny because I feel like this is something that I've been talking a lot about is the expectations. I feel like I've been finding all of these hidden expectations because I think we think like, oh, I don't have any expectations. It's like easy to say that, but like deep within, I'm like, I had like 100 expectations of how this was going to go. And that like cosmic disappointment that happens when we don't receive it. And it's like that expectation, that shadow of expectation, like really takes me out of the moment. Yeah, I haven't actually studied this gene key a lot, but after it coming up now, I think I'm going to take a good read and a good listen to this one. Cause yeah, like that detachment is the gift really, right? And so like detachment, you would think is like a bad thing really. Like I think when you hear that word, you'd be like, oh, detached, like that's not good. But like, it's like a healthy detachment. It's like that being in flow again. It's like allowing things to be as they are. And that freshness that comes when we are completely in the moment and not like really like controlling and like, this is how I want it to go. And this is the only way I'm allowing it to go. Because the universe just doesn't work that way. It's not like going to give it to you like on a silver platter, the exact way. You know, it might come in the weirdest way. And if you have your blinders on because you have expectations, then, you know, you might not receive it. You might miss the opportunity. And that's just the reality of it. And then, yeah, when you have that detachment, then we move into that city of celebration, which is just like, you can celebrate life because you're flowing through life. All is good, right? Yeah, it's a cool one.
I see detachment often being used in a positive terminology or in a positive way a lot when we are talking about detaching from an outcome. Doing the work, trusting the work, and detaching about how something might manifest specifically in your life, or how that very finite idea of you have of the way something should work out. When we can detach from that, we open up an entire world of possibilities because we can get presented with something far grander than we ever had the capacity to hope and dream for. So yeah, it's definitely something I don't think we're used to working with in a positive sense per se, because you have that expectation or you think you know best. And that's very innocent. It's a very innocent thing to do, to have a dream that turns into an expectation, I think. And to be able to detach from that allows you to celebrate what really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's like expectation, like in all circumstances, isn't always bad. Sometimes expectations are strong, healthy boundaries. Sometimes expectations are, you know, they're not always bad. But I think in the shadow context, when we're stuck in that vibration always of expectation, that's where it becomes limiting for us, right?
100%. You can expect bad things and good things too. I expect that I'm going to fail. Like if you have an expectation of someone being an underachiever, they're going to be an underachiever because that's all you see, that's all you find, right? It works. It's such a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Then we're moving into, we said this word a lot, the shadow of chaos, the gift
It's
of
our keyword.
innovation, a keyword, yeah. And it's the city of innocence, which I love because we've been doing so much inner child work and stuff with Alchemia, and we talk a lot about innocence. So yeah, this is sums it up, I think. That chaos.
Yeah. I can see the relationship very clearly between chaos and innocence, because if you've ever hung out with a 2 or a 3-year-old, they are chaotic and it is entirely innocent. But it's that absence of control in a way, right? It's we perceive chaos as bad because it's unknown, when in reality, if you switch the way we show up in that, we can life is chaotic. I don't know who ever told us that there is anything other than chaos. Who convinced us that chaos was not the actual norm? You know, like
Totally. Yeah, and that kind of leads into like with working with the gene keys and the shadows. I mean, they're so interesting the way that you end up working with them, and everybody has their own way. But for me, I found like looking at the shadow and deeply and fully accepting it, like with any kind of shadow work we do, it's like that's the way to do it. And so like, yeah, like you have to look at it not as like a judgmental bad thing. It's like this is just a part of life. This is just the way that it is. There's a lot of chaos happening this month. There's a lot of different astrological planetary alignments that are happening, and that's chaotic, and that's just the way that it is, right? And like, yeah, it's not good or bad. It just is. And then usually once you get to that point, that's usually for me, that's the moment when the shadow like click, it kind of transforms into the gift, which again, this one is the gift of innovation. It's like from the chaos arises something fresh and new, something that is going to be helpful, something that is for the good. And this leads back to that whole thing of like you were saying, like we need you to be here. It's like when you become fully aligned and you do this work, who knows what will come from you? Who knows what amazing, like we're just one invention away from solving the world's problems. A couple, maybe not one, maybe a few inventions away from solving the world's problems, really, right? And the people that are having these beautiful things come from them are the ones that are, you know, kind of in flow with themselves and are aligned with themselves and are being themselves. And just, yeah, that it arises from that chaos though, like from all of us.
I immediately start thinking of like just like humankind as this archetype. Like whether you want to go creation theory, whatever origin of human, like from chaos came us, and we have tried to innovate, build, and create our entire way through everything. And we're all just little innocent babies. We don't know what's happening.
Yeah, that's the highest state, is just coming back to that, like, I don't know. It's mysterious. I don't need to know. I don't need to have control. I don't need to have expectations. I'm just here. I'm doing my best.
Just
I'm
doing
showing
my
up as
best.
me. Yeah. Learning my lessons as I go. Oh, when I touch the stove, it's hot. Okay. I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
All good. I
And that's
love
like
that.
radical permission, radical acceptance, innocence. Like you don't know, man. And when the things when you think you know, that's where that expectation shadow comes in too. It's like, oh no, this is how it's gonna be. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
meh, all right,
Maybe
if
not.
you say so.
Well, there can almost be a negative connotation to innocence in a way. Like, I feel like from people that are hardened, it's like, oh, you're so innocent and naive and kind of like, like you don't know better. It's like you don't have the wisdom. And it's like, but no, like, think of when you were a child, that innocence, that's like, it's a preciousness. There's a tenderness to innocence. There's this like, it's like a flower. It's like, like you can't like squish it in the palm of your hands. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And like, I think we crave that kind of softness, that kind of childlike way about us. And so I think like, this is like, it's going to be a cool opportunity next month to see how that one comes into play for all of us. We can maybe reclaim some of our innocence.
I feel like innocence becomes naivety when you enforce or inflict expectation on innocence.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no morality to being innocent. It's only when you think someone should be anything other than what they are that it becomes a bad thing to be innocent and naive.
Totally.
Why? It's like naivety is like looking at innocence and saying it's bad. It's like, oh, you're innocent. No, they're naive because they shouldn't be innocent. And then you have this expectation of someone. And I think that's what a big problem with humans are, is that we grow up out of that quote unquote childlike permission where you have a reason to be innocent. Oh, they're allowed to not know because they're a kid. And then we become an adult, and now there's these expectations, whether they're societal. Some of them are good, don't get me wrong. There are reasons expectations can be good. But in this context, it's like now you're less than wrong, broken, or not in comparable status as others or peers or anyone else if you are innocent or naive. Because people use the term naive or ignorant. When someone says you're ignorant, that's a negative thing in our society these
Mm-hmm.
days.
It
Oh,
is.
how ignorant of you. Ignorance in and of itself is not negative. It is an admission of not knowing.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot. I'm ignorant as heck about so many things. I am naive about the way, I don't know, rocket ships work, man. Innocence. Why do we attach this negativity to a state of being? Because society has told us, because we expect something else. It's just,
It's like that
it's
expectation that when
interesting.
you're no longer a kid anymore, like the moment you turn 18 and you're able to vote, it's like, oh, I'm suddenly an adult and I have my I have my shit together. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Like we're all still learning and growing at our own rates, at our own paces. You haven't arrived to adulthood. You never are going to. I don't know. Like, I feel like I realized that when I was like in my mid 20s, I was like, oh, like nobody has their shit figured out and you never really feel like you do. And like, you kind of just get used to it after a while. And it's like,
Yeah.
it becomes the process really, right? But when I was a kid, I remember thinking, I'm going to arrive because I'm like, I'm not going to be innocent. I'm not going to be naive anymore. I'm going to know at this point. And it's like, yeah, there's so much ego tied into that. And you're right, judgment. And innocence is really beautiful when we think back to that feeling, like if we think of it more of a somatic experience. Yeah. And so many of us have been through traumatic experiences where innocence has been stolen from us, really, right? At some level where we've been like, maybe that's one of the seeds of that victim wound kind of come in and wreak havoc in our lives, really, right?
Mm-hmm. So correct me if I'm
Yes.
wrong, but when we move into selfishness, that's when we're coming into Taurus season, right? That's the latter half of April.
Yes, so that is the next one, and that is happening on, let me just double check. Yep, it happens exactly on the 21st, so that's exactly the start of Taurus season. So
Very cool.
right
If you look at the
on point with that.
shadows, yeah, the shadows of selfishness, and then the darker shadow or stereotype of Taurus, like selfishness. Those ones really go hand in hand with that stereotypical, like, Taurus really cares about materialistic things, them first. They want food, they want this, they like, it's very potentially perceived as a selfish aspect to Taurus. And it's really interesting to see altruism show up as a gift and then selflessness as well, because that's such a flip side of that coin.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, and selfishness again is like, again, we can look at it from like, oh, it's a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Taking care of yourself isn't bad. But like when you have that bigger picture, and that's a lot of the things I find with the gene keys, it's almost like shadow can be kind of micro, and then you move into the city, it becomes a bit more macro. The selflessness is like looking at the collective, looking at the whole, being in service to the divine, which is also in service to yourself. And that's where altruism comes in. That gift of altruism is like, what is really and truly good for you is good for the world, is good for everybody else, is in alignment. They do align, in the big picture.
Well, and if you look, it's funny because I often see the gift almost as an antidote to the shadow frequency. And if you look at altruism, different word for those who don't know, it's like a belief or practice or disinterest in being selfish and a focus on trying to be selfless for the well-being of others in particular. Mm-hmm. So like, I won't say self-sacrificing because that implies almost a level of martyrism, which is not what this is. Altruism is a good thing. It's the willingness to sacrifice self in some capacity or to get less of a self-focus for other people's well-being. And it really, for me, especially with, I'm thinking about Taurus here, but that really is bringing in that community dynamic. It's really bringing in, like we talked about, the Uranus and the Jupiter conjunction coming in the latter half of April. What does Jupiter do? What is Uranus all about? Jupiter magnifies and brings together and is a benevolent. It's one of the benefics in the sky. It brings together and makes bigger. That's what Jupiter is really known for. And that altruism, that bringing together and making bigger, that only comes after the month that we've just had of April. Out of that mud.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%. Yeah, and then that moves us into the final gene key for the month of April, which will span going into the beginning of May as well, which is the shadow of addiction, the gift of invention, and the city of silence. And this is one that I have in my profile, in my attraction sphere, which has to do with like, who are my teachers, who are my guides? And so like, yeah, addiction is definitely one that I know well. And it is also in Taurus season, like you said. And so it's interesting, like Taurus is very earthy. It's very like, yeah, materialistic. It's like the things. And so it's really easy to get addicted and kind of to materialism, to life, to the 3D really, right? And yeah, for me, addiction is, it's interesting because we think of addiction, you can look at it to substances, to foods, to people, to relationships, but there's also addiction to the way we think. So there's like, like it's just like, it's almost like those neural pathways that kind of like continually run and continually run and continually run. And there's an addiction to that. And so it's like to break out of that brings in invention, brings in like a new way of doing things. And that happens in the pause. It's like because addiction is incessant. It's so like continuous. I'm just going to keep doing the thing. I'm going to keep doing the thing. I'm going to keep eating this food even though I'm full. I'm going to keep doing the drugs even though it's hurting me. I'm just going to, because this is what I know. And it's like that moment we actually have a pause and we sit within that pause is this beautiful invention of a new way. It's like you break that neural pathway, you break that cycle. And that's really, really exciting and definitely leads to, what's going on in the world right now. I think that's what we're searching for, and that's coming into, like you said, Taurus season. Coming out of it, we probably had that reprieve around the 21st, which is like right around that time you mentioned, and now we're kind of starting to see maybe the start of a new way forward in some way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the city's an interesting one. It's hard to talk about because it's silence, and the moment you talk about silence, it's no longer there.
Yeah. And that's the really interesting thing about the Siddhic states too, right? You look at selflessness, or you look at silence, and that's because when you're on that Siddhic level, everything dissolves. There's no separation. Everything becomes one again. And that is the only way to be selfless, because the self does not exist. And the only way to be in silence is there's no one to communicate to. There's nothing to express because everyone knows, because there's no walls. It's utter transparency. There's a dissolvement? Yeah. Disevolution? Both of those things, of the individual self, of the separateness. And when separateness disappears, there's no need to speak, make noise, and or express, because everyone knows everything is one. It's all one. And that Siddhic frequency can get really wild to contemplate because of those things. It can also be very frustrating because of that. at addiction,
Absolutely.
that shadow of addiction, like I was saying to Jupiter, more and more and more, bigger, bigger, bigger. And then Uranus is a little bit abstract, right? It's that wild card in the sky. It's the newer ruler of Aquarius, that marching to the beat of your own drum. Addiction, the levels of addiction, like you were saying, the layers of addiction, and that incessantness, that continuousness. I think the relationship between addiction and invention is, again, a really good, clear example of what we're doing on a collective in this deconstruction of our global society. More money, more natural resources, more land, more, I mean, capitalism. Hello, all of it. More space, more things, more people, more. Money's a big one. More money.
Yeah.
And then
More
it's
money
like,
at the expense of everything else. Yeah.
when we get in that wheel, that literal rat race, again and again and again, same wheel, same things, more of this, more of this, more of this. When you are getting all of those dopamine signals, right? That addictive sense going on in your brain, why do something new? And I think that speaks to why chaos comes in, why agitation comes in, while all of these shadow frequencies, right? Talk about this a lot in the gene keys. One shadow frequency gets triggered, other gene keys that have the similar frequency of the shadow get triggered as well. They're called programming partners, right? And even beyond that, shadow frequency fear triggers fear. So on some level, all shadow frequencies are triggering each other. So you look at that, okay, addiction. Okay, I can't get this. Okay, I'm going to control the chaos. I'm going to manipulate this. I'm going to be really selfish. I have these expectations of, like, it all comes in a nice little part and parcel together. And you can see that we have stayed comfortable with our addictions, with our patterns, with our predictability, and we have not had the need to innovate or to serve other people because we've had the opportunity, and these systems and these structures have enabled us to be selfish, to take and to take and to take. And then we hit rock bottom, and it requires an insane amount of force to push us beyond our comfort zone, to be in a position where we have to adapt and change, where it becomes so dire that it is adapt or die. And that's what happens when you ignore those subtle cues for growth and you stay comfortable and you stay addicted. You will get forced out of the nest because natural cycles do what they do. And one of the biggest, most natural things that you see across species in different continents all over this planet is that that mom is going to push that baby bird out of that nest because it's what's good for the baby bird. And this planet is sick of our shit.
Yep. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and with addiction, the other thing is like, like you said, those expectations is like sometimes you'll do. So have you ever done something and you want to do it again because it's like, oh, I had such an amazing experience with that, and you're like, I'm gonna try and recreate this experience again. I'm gonna do all these things again. I'm gonna get the same feeling, and there's all those expectations. It's like it gets so tied up, really, right? And it's like that the reality of that is like the reason why it was like good for you the first time was because you didn't have expectations. You didn't have all that really, right? And so it's like there was this freshness. It was something new. It was like a new experience, and that was really cool, and you really enjoyed it. So you probably can't recreate it again. And so it's taking you out of the moment and not allowing you to experience the new. So it's like something that like I'm definitely going to keep in the back of my mind as far as like this month, because I think like, yeah, that whole scenario I just described kind of does tie in all of these shadows really, and the gifts as well. Yeah.
Totally. You don't need to know what's on the other side of that door. You just need to have the bravery to walk through it.
Mm-hmm.
And walking through that door is what gives you that dopamine hit of excitement, of growth, of capacity, of newness, of freshness. And that's what you're looking for. But you can't have that when you think you're going to put parameters on it and control it. You got to trust the cosmic shift and sway of what's getting brought to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, it dropped tarot cards. So I think that means it's time to do tarot.
I think it is.
This is a long one, guys, but that's because there is so much stuff going on.
Yes, it is. That's totally fair. I was going to say, if there's going to be a long one, this one makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
So we had the card that we pulled at the year ahead forecast back in December for the whole year of 2024. And that was the Ace of Cups, correct?
Yes, Ace of Cups, which, I'll be honest, up until in our previous forecasts, every single card, I was like, yeah, that's clearly this, clearly this. And then when I pulled up that old video, looked at our tarot forecast, and I saw April being Ace of Cups, it took me a minute to be like, oh, because it feels a lot more positive than I feel about April. But then I was like, okay, no, we know this. Okay, let's break it down, right? Ace of Cups, aces in general, they speak about that potentiality for newness, right? And this is spring. You know, this really is the fact that right now our feet are firmly planted in the mud, but we're planted in the mud because we have that potential to grow. Ace of Cups, that newness, tender emotional beginnings, the potential for newness, a new way to be of service, a new way to bring our hearts out or our essence out into the world. And then one of the newer ways that I've started to think about the Ace of Cups is having a cup that is so full, it's starting to overflow. Because when you are in such abundance, such bounteousness, potentiality, and newness, and being in that flow state, there is no lack. There is only more potential. And then you can give and you can share and you can compound and you can expand. And that is here in April. So there is that light, especially with that Uranus and Jupiter dynamic going on at the latter half of April. That is a big energy that gets brought in with the Ace of Cups. It's like, no, we're doing this for a reason. When our cups truly overflow, when my essence, who I am, is fed and I am connected and I am in alignment, there is no lack of energy. There is no lack of resources. The entire universe conspires in my favor to provide more than enough. Bounteousness in the gene keys. It's one of the ones I have. Beautiful gene key. Very nice. But it is a natural state that we all exist in, and then we filter and pervert and confuse and dilute our access to the bounteousness that is around us all the time. We create that separation. When you look at the Ace of Cups, it is a hand being proffered with a cup that is overflowing like a fountain, and that hand is coming out of the clouds. That is divine support. There is an entire universe of bounteous potential behind you when you are in that aligned place of allowing your true essence, your true emotions, water, cups. This is the emotional realm, our intuition, who we actually are, that internal dynamic. When that overflows out into the world, it creates beautiful, life-giving freshness that is very much so spring. And I'm very thankful that this tarot card showed up and that I trusted the system of the tarot, because I needed a minute to contemplate that this is at the heart of the chaos. There's a reason we're going through this transformative chaos, and that's because there's something on the other side of it, guys. We're not just in this dark tunnel. There's a light at the end of it.
Love that. What a beautiful beacon of trust and hope and like just knowing that like all of this is a natural process. All of this is happening for a reason. This is like for love, for humanity, for the collective, for it all, really, right? I think that's when I was looking at it initially too, I'm like, really? But like, yeah, like this makes total sense now. I think it also speaks to just how transformative this period and the astrology that's happening right now really is too, right?
So much so. And it's deep transformation, right? Like, this is Ace of Cups. This is your essence. This is your innermost you-ness. This is so deep. And deep is slow. Deep is muddy. Deep is messy.
The
but
toughest
man, it
wounds
is also
the tenderest of touch, right?
So, yes. Yes, it does. Very much so.
Tender.
So tender. And you know what? Let's build a world where being tender is safe again, because I think that's why this one got so messed up. Being tender wasn't safe anymore. Tenderness is okay. I think people are very tender.
I know, right? Tenderness has never not been well received. You know, like I feel like it's something that people are always like, but there people are surprised when we approach others with tenderness, really, right? It's not, it's something we're all craving, I think, though.
Oh my gosh. All right. What is our conscious card for April? So a conscious card, it's basically energies that we'll be aware that we're working with. So these energies are either other people bring them into our lives, we call them up. They're either archetypes that we can work with intentionally, move towards. This is like, quote unquote, the good things, things that we want to embody, work with, and will help us navigate April. And then the subconscious card will be the opposite of that. Things that are grabbing at our ankles and trying to pull us deeper into denser energies, things that might be affecting us that we're unaware of, whether other people or internal or societal, you name it. So conscious first, because it's the first on my list in my mind. Because I said so. Because I said so. Interesting. Okay, Seven of Pentacles is our conscious card.
Tend to a garden there.
Yep. 7 is interesting because it's a bit disruptive. If you look at 6 is like an infinity. It's often like a continuation of things. Pentacles is earth. It's definitely about what we've built. It's definitely money, finances, our body. And this guy has a lot going on. He's built a lot of things, and he's really evaluating where he's at. And I think this speaks to a little bit of that evaluation, slow-moving, contemplative realism that needs to be applied when we're in that chaos, right? Because we are talking, this whole month has been heavy and emotional, and I am really seeing the practicality of the 7 of Pentacles. This is intentional, slow building, and when we can apply some of these teachings, some of these thought processes, we can temper some of that emotional reactivity that might be present in deep excavation, right? Strong foundations, intentional building. Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
definitely.
asking for help.
I think it's also like with the conscious card is like, this is the conscious, like almost like taking stock of what our foundations are, like what we've built, what we've grown, really, right? And working with that and seeing it clearly. And I think that kind of makes sense as to like even everything we've talked about, really, right? It's like, show up, do the work, be you, you know, like
yeah. And it's definitely a work in progress, right? Like this is not, we're not there yet. Like this energy is definitely not, he's not arrived. He's not sitting comfortably. Like he's actively working. He's got the hoe in hand. He's tilling the soil. A bit arduous, but I think we know that. And I think it's just the focusing in on what can you do? What are we doing with our hands? What are we, like some things are beyond our control in the moment. And that's just the reality of it. What are you building? What are you growing? What are you tending to?
Yeah, I like that word, tending to. We're talking about tenderness, tending to, and
I think we mentioned it earlier too, didn't we? You said our hearts are sore and tired. We need tending. We need to tend to our usness, meanness.
Yeah. Bringing in that softness into the month. I like that.
Classic. We have so classic. We have the 10 of Wands for our subconscious card. Wands. Just crazy. Okay,
just
wands
breaking his back there.
just right back into it. Okay, so the wands are the fire suit, and 10 is an overabundance. So 9, if 9 is completion, 10 in the tarot is I have enough and then some. I have enough and I have enough for my friend and my friend's friend. And so we got a lot of fire. We got so much fire. We have an excess of fire. It's almost like it's Aries season where there's a Mars conjunction happening and a comet shows up in the sky and there's a solar eclipse. That's almost like the 10 of Wands that's going on. I mean, his hands are full. His hands are so full. I would like you to notice that his head's down. He's not really looking where he's going. He's got all his wands, right? And he's trudging. He's moving towards town, clear blue skies. He's not having a bad time. This is excess, right? So like he has achieved, he's succeeded. He's got this energy, this vibrant, this vital creativity, spirit, and a little bit more. And it's in that little bit more where that attention and awareness needs to come in. This really does just speak to, I think, the energetics that we've been calling to that chaos. If he trips, those wands are going everywhere. He's got 10 wands, 10 things going on. All of this passion, all of this intention, all of this potentiality, spirit, fire, creativity, opportunity, energy, just straight up energy, that spring freshness, that like I'm going to hit the ground running right out of the gate kind of stuff going on. And you're really going to want to make sure you're managing that, which is very hard when you have an excess of it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what we said earlier, like you talked about the tyrant kind of coming forth and like that overwhelm that can kind of come out when there's like too much and we kind of feel overwhelmed and then we kind of go into even all of the gene keys, the control, the expectation. It's just like, I got all this stuff, I'm overwhelmed. It's a lot going on. But also it's also a good thing that we have all this stuff that we have like, this is especially when we like bring it back to that Ace of Cups really, right? Like this is all happening for a reason.
And so, like you said, too, the macro and the micro, coming from an internal perspective is what we've just been saying. I have all of this energy. I have all of this X, Y, and Z, right? If we look at this on the macro stage, it can be fear mongering. Oh my God, look at everything that's going on. Oh my God, care about this. Oh my God, excitability. It's boom, oh boom, oh boom. Oh, we need military forces for an eclipse. Oh, there's a lot. Oh, like what's Texas doing? Like, who's passing what law where? There's a lot of fear mongering intensity. If we look at this on the macro lens, out there in the world, bigness, explosive. I mean, it could also just be really referring to the fact that the sun itself is going to be blacked out. That's shocking, shock value, like boom, wow. Beware that fire can get really bright.
Yeah, and it is in the subconscious, so even like the more shadowy aspects of the unseen parts of ourself, like you said, is like, be mindful that like that those energies might be and probably are going to be at play, and like it's being aware and moving back into the conscious card, the things that we're conscious of, the Seven of Pentacles there, and it's
where are you putting your energy? Right? Do you want
tend
to
to what needs to be tended? Do what you can do.
This is that parable of, right? Like you have two wolves inside of you. Whichever one you feed is the one that's going to win. Where are you putting your energy? What are you tending? Are you going to feed into that fear? Are you going to go down that rabbit hole? Are you going to let yourself get worked up, get triggered, get excited? Are you going to jump? Are you going to bite the bait kind of thing? What are you tending? Are you building a more beautiful world, or are you spiraling about a not so good one? Where's your intention, right? Like, and what's your why behind it?
Yes, that's very true. We talk a lot about
whys. Oh my gosh. I think, it's pretty much everything at the end of the day.
Are we feeling complete on that? That's like not too much, right?
It's only an hour and a half of that. It's going to be a big one, but it is what it is. And everything is working out best case scenario. And it's going to come out in the wash. You got to trust. You gotta trust the big cycle of it all. That's something that I haven't mentioned yet, which I would like to mention, is that as daunting and big as potentially scary as these eclipses can see, these are cycles. They're cyclical. It happened 6 months ago. It'll happen in another 6 months. You have lived through similar things. Not the same, because like I said, this is pretty dang unique. But eclipses have a cyclical nature to them, and they serve a purpose, and that purpose is the evolution of you, the world. Everything is working out best case scenario. So trust that it's cyclical, and that you have you've made it through eclipse seasons before, and you will make it through them again.
Yes, I love that.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us again. Just a reminder, classic YouTube things. If you could subscribe to the channel, like or comment below, all of that will help us and the algorithms. Again, I would love to hear if there's a particular dynamic or something that we missed that you think is going to pop off this month. It's always interesting to hear from people who are living this experience of these energies. We will see you all back here shortly. We do have all of the links to all of our offerings right now. We have a retreat coming up in the summer for inner child work if you're interested in something like that. That has to do a lot with our whys, like we mentioned, getting into that heart of who you are and being able to show up in this world and make change from a place of aligned integrity and core stability. So if you are interested in inner child work, check out the Once Upon a Mushroom, Return of the Inner Child retreat below. Other than that, we have a few other offerings coming out. We have some microdosing courses going to be available soon for mushrooms. There is our free course on how to prepare for plant medicine ceremony. It is springtime, so this is, especially in the northern hemisphere in the Western world, very much so ceremony season. So if you are preparing, feel free to check out that course. Other than that, good luck. Happy eclipse season, and we'll see you on the other side.
Sending our love for sure.